Yeah, I mean, when you're allergic to healthy foods, like I see people who tell me they're allergic to bananas or they're allergic to kiwi. I see that a lot. A lot of times it's not the food itself. It's very often what they're eating that fruit with or that food with.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've seen where somebody could have a reaction depending on what they're combining it with. So I believe in food combining. That's a principle of thought from the School of Natural Hygiene. And I do feel that food combining works. I tried it on myself many, many years ago, and I was very impressed with how well food combining worked for me. I see a lot of
I
people
agree.
coming into the raw food community, like dipping lots of bananas into jars of almond butter.
Yep, I did it too.
And I did it too, and I also see a lot of people getting really gassy from that and bloated and not understanding why they're gassy and bloated because they're eating raw food. But, part of it might be too much fat, a part of it might be poor food combining. So there's a number of things that go on when people think they're eating healthy. And then I'm looking at a food diary and I can almost always see what it is and be able to tweak it.
Wow.
And so that's something that I see a lot is that the food combining is missing. And I'm glad that you think that that's important as well.
No, listen to Karen Ranzi on this. The food combining is you could be eating the best organic, the best produce possible and everything, but it's just science. If you put a protein and a starch in your stomach at the same time, the literally the enzymes basically are fighting to cancel each other out. And then basically the protein is going to get held up in the stomach, which is blocking the starch from moving on to the small intestine. So the starch then just basically rots and turns to alcohol. Like there's so many things that happen that we're not aware of until we make a decision. I'm going to learn about food combining and how to actually do it. Um, so please, and
Yeah.
you know what, Karen, that was one of my last couple lightning round questions I was going to ask. So you read my mind on food combining. Um, do you have a particular resource that you like on food combining for people to
Well, I have the same chart in all my books, and I use the chart that was created by Dr. Dave Klein. And he has a book called Healing Colitis and Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's Disease. That's a wonderful book for anybody who has digestive issues. But I use that in all my books. My first book, Creating Healthy Children, I couldn't wait to get the food combining chart in there because that was one of the main things that was helpful for me back in the 90s already was the food combining. But I used it in my second book, which is my recipe book, Raw Vegan Recipe Fund for Families. That's the book that has 115 recipes. And I'm pretty sure I have it in my Heal and Prevent Autism, Natural Solutions That Work in that book as well, because I think it's so important. So I have it in all my books. Um, oh, I don't think I put it in my most recent book. My most recent book came out in January, which is my story of healing. I had talked about so much, and in my first book, I talked about my cystic acne being resolved so quickly in 3 months back in 1989 when I gave up dairy, and then having complete healing and healing even of the scars in 1994 when I went raw vegan. So I talked about that and gave really easy guidelines for anybody with skin problems in Bye Bye Acne, clearing over 25 years of cystic acne in 3 months. That's the title of that book. But I don't think I have the food combining chart in there, but I have all the guidelines on how to heal. And I do believe I talk about food combining because it is one of what I believe is the principles that when people start doing it, they feel almost an immediate health result with their digestion. That doesn't mean that every single recipe in my recipe books is all well combined.
Sure.
There are some that are like not terrible, but not perfect either. And sometimes I will talk about that,
But
even in my book. So,
you know what? Know the rules before you break the rules.
yeah. And if you break them once in a while, and
So
like I
what?
tell
Yeah.
parents, like I was a little too hard on my kids. Like I would try to get them to food combine, at this young age. Be happy that they're eating raw food. Like, don't try to get them to do all this. That's really for adults. And honestly, the more that my kids watched me, they did it really on their own. They naturally started doing food combining. I didn't really in the early couple of years, I didn't try to get them to do that. It was a little bit later. But I noticed that when they were watching me and how I served food, they would really do the same thing. And if you just hang a food combining chart up on your refrigerator, your kids might get interested. It's a little bit overwhelming with arrows all over the place. So I don't, for some people, especially people who have like really intense emotional eating issues, I don't recommend going crazy with food combining in the beginning. That's something that would come a bit later.
Yes, particularly when you think about all of your favorite comfort foods are poorly combined. When you think about,
Totally.
meat and potatoes or a sandwich or any of that stuff. So
Yeah.
totally agree with Karen. So and by the way, I've read Karen's books. They are very good. So I would recommend these resources. Um,
Thank you so
my
much, Dave.
my absolutely yes. Okay, last question here in our lightning round, which was let's say